Hey, good evening. It's Pastor Mary, and I am sitting outside on this beautiful night. I know if anybody from the Midwest watches it, I hope you had better weather today. I understand you've been cold and rainy. You've been below normal. We've been above normal. And now if we could just give you a little bit of a little bit of our heat, then that might help you to be able to enjoy your weather a little bit better. I know my brother in Kansas City said it was 66 degrees yesterday. I'm waiting to see who's Cheryl. You're so good. You remember, you're always so good. And somebody's behind you, and I have a feeling it's probably Betty, knowing Betty. So that's my neighbors. They have 4 dogs. They're only supposed to have 2. But they have 4, 2 little, and I think 2 big. And I actually can't see them because we have so many trees back behind our house that I can only hear them. But our little dog, little man, loves to hear them, and he'll come out and try to figure out where are they at. So one of these days we'll have to see if we can take him over to meet them. But our neighbors next door have Maddie. I think I shared the neighbor on this side. Joe had a dog, and she died about a month ago. And her little dog, Toto, has gone to live with other people. And then on this side, they have a little dog named Maddie. Hey, good evening, Betty. Hey, you're getting no sound. Okay, well, let's see. Huh. Betty, are you getting no sound? Betty, tell me if you're getting sound. Because if Betty's getting sound, Cheryl, then you need to check your settings. As far as I know, the sound should be on. Betty, can you hear me? And somebody else has dropped off. Somebody else is on. Can you give me a thumbs up or something? Yes, you can hear me. Okay. So, Cheryl, check your settings. You may be on mute, or you may have turned it off or something, or turned it down. So check that to see if that's what's going on with you. I wanted to share another flower tonight. I think I said this the other night that my sister-in-law, Margaret, not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before, she had sent us, I think it's an amaryllis. And it was beautiful, and I kept the plant, and it stayed alive. And then now this spring, it has bloomed, and it has double blooms. Let's see if I can get it on there. Can you see it? The dog's telling me, okay. Let's see if I can get both sides of it. It's got double blooms. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, I brought it out with me. It's been sitting by our garage, so I would see it every day when I'd come out. And then about, say a week ago, I noticed it was ready to bloom, and I was so surprised. I thought I'd just get green. So I've got to send a picture to my sister-in-law and say, hey, look, the amaryllis you sent us for Christmas over a year ago has bloomed again. So, and I kept it outside, I think, all winter, and it rebloomed, which is really amazing. I mean, we had some bad weather, so anyway, let's see. Okay, sorry, we're trying to get a hold of people for Christopher's graduation. So one of Christopher's teachers who he had, 8th and 9th grade, we found a way to get a hold of him and invite him. Christopher's having a small graduation on Friday, May 20th, and then we are having a celebration, and everybody listening to this who's in the area is invited to come. It will be on Saturday, May 21st from noon to 3 at Epiphany Lutheran Church in Conyers, Georgia. And we'll have lunch, and we'll have music, and I hope you can come. No presents asked. If you want to bring a side dish, that's great, but we just want to come and have people come and celebrate with us Christopher's graduation. So, and like I said, we're not doing the big graduation. We went with Samuel last year, and it was over 2 hours long, and Samuel, it was okay. It was fine, but it was just, there was some repetition. It was just extremely long, and we told Christopher's teacher, hey, he's going to get nothing out of this. It's not going to have any real meaning to him. You're just going to have to keep him quiet the whole 2 hours. And, you know, we had been to several small graduations that he had participated in, that he sang at one. He read at one. And so we said we'd rather do the small graduation. It'll have a lot more meaning for him, and he'll remember it. And we're going to record it. So maybe I could share it online. It won't be really long, but his principal, a vice principal, his teachers will all wear their caps and gowns. Christopher will wear his cap and gown. It'll be at the library, or now the media center it's called. Christopher, I hope, will speak. We're hoping he'll, because he's a good reader, and hoping we'll help him write a few things to thank teachers and the principal, his principal comes to his classroom every day and visits the kids. He's done that every year. Christopher's been there, and he's been a really great principal, and we are very thankful. Christopher went to Union Grove High School, and we're thankful Samuel went there too. An excellent school and excellent program for kids with special needs too. So anyway, we're 2.5 weeks away. So lots is going on, and my schedule will be a little bit changed. Hang on a second. A little bit changed that week, but that's 2 weeks away. So next week I'll be on here Tuesday, Thursday night. There will be worship tomorrow night. I will not be there, but there will be worship on at 6:30 tomorrow night, and then there will be I'll be there next week for the worship service. So tonight I want to share. So I lead a group called Centering Prayer on Tuesdays at church. I'm not the pastor, but he had been a long time ago. But Atlanta Airport cell phone lot. What a good place to be. You must be picking up or dropping off. I bet you're picking up somebody. Thanks for joining me from there. So anyway, Andy, who now lives in Tennessee, had started the Centering Prayer group, and Centering Prayer is a spiritual practice of centering yourself in God in quiet. We do it for about 20 minutes, and then we read a book together. And the book that we had talked about with Theology on Tap, that was second favorite, is the one we're using. It's called Faith After Doubt by Brian McLaren, who was a pastor for many years, and it's an excellent book. And then Theology on Tap, it used to be an evening group, and they'd have, beer or wine or drink and gather and talk about theology things. And so that group now, it's been at lunch for a while, and it started back up a couple months ago. And we're reading a book called Julian of Norwich, Wisdom in a Time of Pandemic and Beyond by Matthew Fox. Julian of Norwich lived in the, I'm trying to think, I may say the wrong period if it was the 1400s, but I think she was earlier than that, honestly. But she's, the things she writes about, okay, so she was 7 years old when the plague hit Norwich in 1349. And then it returned, it said, from 1361 to 1364, in 1368 and 1371, from 1373 to 1375, in 1390, and again in 1405, and on into the 15th century. And so she said by the time she wrote her first book in the 1370s, the population of England was cut in half. So many people died that they were buried 5 deep in mass graves. All the street cleaners in London died of the plague, and 2 out of 3 clergy died. And probably the best and bravest, since they were serving the sick and dying when they caught the deadly disease. So anyway, that's what this book comes out of. And so what Matthew Fox does is he takes her writings and shares what she had to share in her faith in a time of plague, and to speak to us today in what we have faced and what the world continues to face. And we don't know what's going to happen next. We know the numbers are going up with this newest variant. The blessing now is that we have medication. There's things we can do that we did not have in that first year. And it's built on 10 years of science, of research and things that were done before that to be able to create the all the things they've been able to give us, the vaccinations, and now the treatments to help people who get it. And I unfortunately have been hearing of several people within one person of me who have had COVID recently and who are undergoing treatment. So anyway, so both books were talking, the parts we were reading today were about the brain. And I don't know what your interest is in the brain, but I have a great interest. I love studying and learning about the brain. I think if I had known this younger, I might have gone, because I had a real interest in science. I always loved science, and I thought I was going to be, at first I thought I was going to be a nurse, and then I changed my mind at 14. That's a story. And then I thought I was going to be a pharmacist for a while. And then I really wanted to be a physical therapist. I really, really wanted to be a physical therapist, but I struggled so in chemistry. I went back between a B and a C in high school, that I thought if I struggle this much in chemistry now, I don't know how I would do in college. And I wouldn't want to study for 2 years and then not get into a physical therapy program, because at that time, that's what you did. So then I had a love of politics, so then I switched to political science. Yeah, go figure. But I still did really excellent in my science classes in college, very, very well, and have always had a love for science and a deep appreciation for scientists and the work that they do, and for all people in medical fields and scientists, researchers, everything. So anyway, I've really had a real keen interest in the brain in the last decade or so, in so many ways, and how the brain is affected by illness, by addiction, how our brain works. So both of the books today, we're talking about different parts of our brain that were formed and that came on, get kind of lit up at certain ages in our life. And he did a really great comparison. He talked about one of the parts of the brain and about faith that I thought was really, really, really interesting today, and I wanted to share some of it with you. Matthew Fox shared about the intuitive brain, which is the right hemisphere of our brain, our mystical brain, he said, if you will. And then he says, Einstein equates mysticism with standing wrapped in awe, and says that it is from our intuition that we derive our values, not from the rational brain. So he shares about, he also talks about, some of the parts of the brain, and talks about, let's see. Oh, awe. That was the thing that really, really touched me today, about awe. And says that, and Julian just had such a positive outlook on God and God's love, and she had such an awe of God. I talked about, so it's talking about awe, and says, Julian instructs us to take delight and joy in life and to respond with reverence and humility. Awe has something to do with encountering greatness, something which is bigger than ourselves, the sacred. Holiness and awe go together. Here's how Julian puts it. The reverence I speak of is holy awe, which is entwined with humility. The creature sees the divine as wondrously great and the self as wondrously small. This is a virtue instilled in all God's loved ones. And then he shares, Rabbi Heschel says that awe is the mind encountering the universe. This awareness of awe and greatness can be a regular thing. Eckhart, who's another saint who had written, says that for the person who is awake, breakthrough does not happen once a year, once a month, or even once a day, but many times each and every day. Julian says that we experience this gift when we feel the presence of God. It is a yearning deep within us, and it is holy. This holy awe is the experience we most deeply long for, because it creates a wonderful sense of security, true faith, and certain hope. The greatness of love makes this awe sweet and delicious. From this tasting of holy awe, a sense of secure. Oh, let's see, I read that part. I think so. Wait a minute. Yeah, love is its source, as is the case of joy that we considered above. Goodness is the object of love. Love and goodness, like joy and awe, travel side by side with goodness. The via positiva is here for the taking. Julia names both the reality of the via positiva and the via negativa, as well as the tension between them when she tells us that two duties belong to our souls. One is to reverently marvel, the other is humbly to endure, always taking pleasure in God. To marvel reverently is to admit awe into our lives. Awe is marveling. Indeed, the root meaning of miracle is marvel. Marveling is a holy act, and we should indulge ourselves often in marveling. As Eckhart says, isness is God, and as Julian says, goodness is God. We need to immerse ourselves in it on a regular basis, and especially when suffering and chaos are all about us. So we had a really good conversation about the awe of nature and seeing God in the creation. One of the ladies shared about going to Jackson Hole and just being so marveled by it and just looking at it and crying and how moving it was. And we all shared about seeing awe in God's creation. Hey, Ellie, good evening. And Sharon, good evening. And talked about, encountering deer. I said, well, I almost hit a deer a week ago. Where we live, so across the street from us is no house. There's blueberry bushes planted and apple trees and other lovely things. We live in a subdivision, but across from us is just nature. And in the late spring and early summer, throughout the summer, you can hear tons of frogs croaking at night. And outside here in my backyard, it's just totally covered in big trees and all the greenery around me. And anyway, I could so relate to our conversation because I feel so in awe of God's creation. I remember we were talking about the Grand Canyon, and I don't know if you all have been, but to me, the Grand Canyon is one of the most moving, awe-filling, awe-inspiring places I've ever been in my life. It's just such a marvelous sense of God's creation and the wonder and the beauty that God has created in our world. And we talked about the need to preserve and care for the national parks and the national forests and not to use up the resources of them, which I thought it's very true. God has given us this beautiful creation, not only to be in awe of it, but to take care of it and to be responsible for it. And I shared just for a moment, but some of you know that I lived and worked in Yosemite National Park for 2 summers. I lived right in the park. I worked in a restaurant, and I led worship outdoors on Sundays at one of the campgrounds. And I loved it so much, I went back for my second summer. And it was so moving to be there. And I would just look at Half Dome, and I would just soak it in every day, because when I'd come out of the tent cabin I lived in, so the tent cabin had a wooden floor. It had a fire burning stove in it, although I think they quit working in the summer, even though Yosemite is really cold at night, even in the summer. And then it had a very heavy duty canvas over it with a door. And I had a roommate, and we had a place to hang our clothes and a dresser drawer and a bed, and that was about it. And we had no bathroom in it. We walked to a long trailer that was about 300 yards away. And I always said one night I had to go to the bathroom about 3 a.m, and I encountered a raccoon sitting on there's like a porch you went up on, to go into the door to the bathrooms and the showers. And I was in my head thinking, okay, I don't want to be bit by this raccoon. It's probably rabid, but I got to go to the bathroom. And I don't remember how I got around it. I just remember that raccoon. But I made it to the bathroom, and I made it in one piece. And it may have been because a lot of the animals were sadly domesticated. And I say sadly because they became dependent on people. And the fire of 1990 happened the summer I was there. And they closed down the parks, and a number of squirrels and other creatures who had been fed by people on a regular basis died because they quit figuring out how to get food for themselves. And I will let you in on a little secret that so there was about 20, 25 of us on our team. We worked in jobs all over Yosemite. We had 6 different sites for worship, and we would meet every Sunday together after we had worship and for a meeting. And then we usually were off Sunday and Monday so we could lead worship, and we often went on trips around the area together, saw lots of country there. And anyway, one of my friends created a nickname called a Turon, and he said, and a Turon is a tourist and a moron. And if we saw him feeding creatures, or like one deer had a baby and somebody walked up to it, that is a big no-no. That puts an imprint on the animal. That is not what the animals are for. They're there for us to look at, to be in awe of them, and not to bother them, because they are not supposed to be domesticated. We affect their life by doing that. So I'm just saying, I feel very passionate about that, because I saw what happened to the animals that had been domesticated when people were, when the fire of 1990 happened. I was working in the park, and I went to work at 5:30 in the morning every day, and I was walking to work to, because nothing ran at that time, and there were cars parked all around inside the valley where people would come to, because at the time about 15,000 people would come into this area of just a few miles, and it did a lot of damage to the creation there. And anyway, so the people had to stay overnight there, and slept in their cars if they didn't have a reservation to stay there. And then they moved them all out that week, and then they were gone for the week, and the firefighters came in and stayed to help fight the fires, because Yosemite is massively big, and this fire was way out. It wasn't anywhere close to us, but it burned a small town that was in Yosemite, and the people only had a half an hour to get out. And that town was there before Yosemite had started, and those people were grandfathered in. But anyway, most of them lost everything they had. I'll never forget that, because I worked with Red Cross while I was there to just try to be a support and listen to them. And anyway, so that's when we saw a lot of animals, a lot of smaller animals die because they had been used to people feeding them. And so that I saw what happens when animals who shouldn't be domesticated become domesticated and depend on humans, and then humans aren't there. So anyway, I kind of diverted on that, but the awe and the beauty of what God has created. So then there was one other part I wanted to read that I thought was really, really good about awe. Well, there's 2 others. I want to read this part. Julian recognizes that love and awe, like love and goodness, go together. God's goodness evokes love. It is our nature as his servants to revere God in awe, and it is in our nature as his children to adore him for his goodness. Although holy awe cannot be separated from love, still they are 2 different things. You cannot have one without the other. And then this was another thing Rabbi Heschel said. Wonder, radical amazement, the state of maladjustment to words and notions, is a prerequisite for an authentic awareness of that which is. And so then talks about how people can lose awe in their life. And I shared the part about the intuitive brain, the mystical brain. So then this was really interesting to me to read this. Rachel Carson lived 1907 to 64, recognized that our power of awe began in childhood, and she lamented how readily adults put it behind them. She said this: a child's world is fresh and new and beautiful, full of wonder and excitement. For most of us, that clear-eyed vision, that true instinct for what is beautiful and awe-inspiring is dimmed and even lost before we reach adulthood. Her number 1 wish for children: a sense of wonder so indestructible that it would last throughout life. As an unfailing antidote against the boredom and disenchantment of later years, the sterile preoccupation with things that are artificial, the alienation from the sources of our strength. Maybe this is what Jesus had in mind too when he said to a group of adults that they must become like children if they are to receive the reign of God. Well, I really love that, about having a sense of awe and wonder of God's creation. And I feel like that has really stayed with me. I have a real sense of gratefulness every day for so much beauty around me. And I really, really come to appreciate, we were talking about, having things doesn't make one happy. And I've been thinking a lot about Naomi Judd and just the pain she must have felt and how heartbreaking it was to hear of such a beautiful lady who gave so much joy and hope to so many people. And she was very open with her struggle with depression. And I've had clinical depression at least five times in my life, in my 20s and also into my early 30s. And clinical depression is usually got a genetic component. It runs in my family. And but I feel so grateful every day. I know what pain is. I know what sorrow is. I know what depression is. I know what it's like to be so down and so lost. But I'm thankful every day to God that even though I've lost my parents, and David and I have gone through terrible things of losing pregnancies and my parents going through a flood, that I still have hope. I still have joy, and I still have awe in God's creation. And I'm just so thankful to that. I know, I've shared about grief, and that grief, is the last sign of love, which was a recent quote I had heard that was so beautiful. But grief can turn into depression, and it's knowing the difference and knowing when you need to get help and knowing when you need to talk to somebody. And, I'm here if I can be of help and lead somebody to help for that. But I'm just thankful to have a sense of awe, and I'm really looking forward to this trip this summer. I'm going to see things I've never seen that I may never see again, places I've never been, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to being with my family and having that time just enjoying being together. And I'm praying our car's not going to break down. It's had a few little problems lately, but the guys who take care of my husband's car says that our van should be able to make the trip. So, we've got a lot of great things to be thankful for. Christopher's graduation's coming up, and my brother's coming, and my cousin Karen's coming in a few weeks after that, and confirmation. Some kids are going to be confirmed at church, and baptism of William this Sunday at church. So there's so many things to be thankful for, to give thanks to. There's so much to be in awe of, and I hope that you will, if you do not already, consider making a little list every day of 3 or 4 things you're grateful for in that day, of something maybe you've seen or experienced or heard or smelled or touched, or being with family. Just when we give thanks, that gratitude turns into things that really give us a positive outlook on life, even when we struggle and go through difficult times. So a couple of prayer requests just for Charlie Parks, his continued battle with Parkinson's, and also for Charlie Norman, Connie's Clompasine's husband, who is in a rehab center. Several special requests for people that I know who are asking for special requests. And for anyone who's really dealing with depression or struggling with suicidal thoughts, that there will be those to intercede and to help them through, and to help them find help to really make a difference, that they can get back into an even better way of life. And also continued prayers that the conflict in Ukraine will end, and there will be no more death, and that there will be peace, not only there, but in the other places in the world where there are struggles. And praying for those who have been abusers and those who've been abused, that they will get help and turn their lives around. The abusers will turn their lives around and not live that way anymore, and that those who've been abused can have hope and wholeness again. So, and those dealing with addiction and money problems and worry, just that those can be lifted, and that we can all live with a sense of awe of God's creation. So Thanks for joining me tonight. Like I said, there will be worship on tomorrow night at 6:30. I'll be back on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. I had to think, too much going on in my brain. And Friday night, we'll have Friday night fun this week. So we'll regular schedule this week. And I think next week too. And then things will change for a little while in 2 weeks' time. But I'll share that as we get closer to that. So thank you, Sharon. Always thank you for the prayers. So for all those in need. Thank you all so much for joining me. Part of my joy today is being with you, sharing these beautiful flowers that are just such a gift. And the other flowers out here, I don't know about you at Mother's Day, but I always like to get flowers and plant flowers that weekend if I can, or a few days after. And I've got some things to plant and some things to get replanted. So, and just enjoy the flowers. So, enjoy life. Give thanks for the great awe of the majesty and beautiful creation God has created. Give thanks for yourself. Praise God for creating you to be the unique person that you are, the joy that you bring to other people. And if you say you don't bring joy, you're wrong. I know there's at least one or more people that you bring joy to. So just remember that and give thanks for that every day. All right. Thanks for joining me tonight. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And before I go, peace for Kathy and Bill Gates, who had to put down their sweet dog, Winston, last night. And I just pray for comfort and peace for them in this difficult time. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night and a great day tomorrow. See you Thursday.